Welcome back to Funky Politics, the hardest hitting political show on the planet. Hey, good morning to all of you. Hey, I am DC, the wonderful host of Funky Politics. I call myself the wonderful host. I love this show. I love Funky Politics. This is the season to be political, right, folks? Yeah, that's what our show is going to be about today. Hey, but you know, my fellow Americans, as Dr. Eddie Glaude so eloquently stated a couple of nights ago, I want to play something for you that I think he kind of surmised a lot of the feelings that those of us who look like me and you possibly have at this time. So check this out right here. Dr. Eddie Glaude of Princeton University.
Let's turn now to Eddie Glaude. Professor Eddie Glaude, chair of the Department of African American Studies at Princeton University. He's also an MSNBC contributor. And I know you were looking forward to a quick and decisive victory on Tuesday. But last night you tweeted something that got our attention. You said, "My anxiety levels are off the charts." Where's your anxiety this morning, Professor?
Well, I'm still anxious. You know, I'm trying to repeat, Emerson's words in your own words. I'm breathing, but I'm trying to be patient. I'm still trying to I'm asking myself this question, Craig. What are these people voting for when they vote for Donald Trump?
Deep question. What are these people voting for when they vote for Donald Trump? Hey, that's a question to ask yourselves. And then on the flip side, you have conservatives say, well, what are these people voting for Joe Biden? What are they voting for? Anyway, hey, that was Eddie Glaude, a great young brother out of Princeton University, deep contributor to MSNBC. We love him around here, Funky Politics, right? Got to get him on the show one day here real soon, too. Unfortunately, we don't choose the hands in which we're dealt. But like I say, I got a shout out to Detroit, Wayne County, Macomb, Oakland County up there in Michigan. Shout out to Atlanta, Fulton County, down in Savannah, Georgia. These folks, and I'm talking about black people, people of color, brown people, Native Americans, Asians, they stood in line, and they are now responsible for the state of Georgia being considered in play. It hadn't been called as of right now, but we will keep you up to date as much as we can here on Funky Politics. But I want you to take a quick look at what's been going on in the state of Georgia and Stacey Abrams and her entire group down there.
I'm Blaine Alexander in Georgia, where at least 200,000 votes are still outstanding.
Is this taking longer than you expected to take, and why?
Oh, no, it's really going much quicker. Every legal vote will be counted.
The Secretary of State says all hands are on deck to finish counting as early as tonight. The two counties with the most remaining still tallying votes, Fulton and DeKalb counties in metro Atlanta, a growing blue spot in a once reliably red southern state.
We are looking at two of the largest counties in the state. There also happen to be two of the blackest counties in the state of Georgia.
And the vast majority of black voters statewide back Biden, 87% compared to Trump's 11%.
Can you imagine that? The state of Georgia is in play. The state of Georgia is in, that's almost like saying the state of Mississippi, the state of Alabama, the state of Tennessee is in play. But no, the state of Georgia. There's a possibility you could have actually two runoffs. Well, you got one runoff right now for one of the Senate races, and we'll talk about that a bit later with my guest. But there's a possibility if numbers drop down for Purdue that Ossoff will go to a runoff. We'll be keeping you abreast of that as well. Finally, I think 45 has come to grips with the election and its long-term implications on its future. Take a listen to what Dana Bash said about the president and talking to some of his insiders the other day.
As all this news is coming in, most of it not seeming all that great for President Trump. Dana, you have some new reporting.
Well, I talked to a source familiar with President Trump's thinking who said that the president is down, obviously tired, which is understandable, but not feeling all that great, despite the public bluster that we've seen and heard from his campaign, from his children, that the president is seeing what's happening. He is seeing that in some of these key states that will determine whether he is president or not, his lead is shrinking. Or if Joe Biden is ahead, notwithstanding what we just saw, this is before that just happened, it's just not looking that good for the president. And the sense from the source that I spoke to is that the president is starting to see this slip away.
The president is starting to see this slip away? Yeah, that's a good that's a good term for when you start to see it slip away. Dana, I agree with you. We will see here very soon. The numbers are still being tabulated. The president is going to court right now. We'll talk about that a little bit later on the show. But right now, in terms of numbers, it looks pretty good for Vice President Biden. There's a possibility on today, here on Thursday, probably by the time the show's done, we may have a winner of Georgia and we may have a winner of Nevada. We'll see. We don't know. We'll know. But hey, this is Funky Politics, and what better to talk about today than what politics and how funky it is. My gosh, Cuban Americans. I really want to talk about Cuban Americans, especially in the Miami-Dade area, and their influence on the vote in Florida. We want to talk about that. We also want to talk about the brothers. I looked at some really disturbing numbers, and I don't want to call them disturbing because you all have a right to vote for who you want to vote for, but sometimes we need to look at what's in our best interest, right? So we want to talk about black men and their vote in the swing, apparently, of about 18 to 20% toward Donald J. Trump. And to do all of that, I had to bring in a specialist today, none other than my good friend, Tanya Weathersby, who is a columnist, award-winning columnist for the Commercial Appeal newspaper right here in Memphis, Tennessee, baby. So without further ado, give me 1 second. We have a quick commercial break, and I'll bring back to you Tanya Weathersby of the Commercial Appeal right here on Funky Politics.
Welcome back to Sell or Fail. If you ain't selling,
you failing.
You know it, baby. Let's get this money.
And today we have Justin Green, new author of Getting to the Green Sales. What attracted you to sales?
Like Addy always says, I was one teacher or something that changed your outlook on stuff. And this dude here, Fred Landis, I never forget his name. Man, changed my outlook on what I want to do in life and everything.
It's air and opportunity. Go suck up the air while you're taking that opportunity.
The worst thing you can do is try and count somebody else's pocket. Like, that was one of the biggest mistakes.
Sales is the great equalizer.
Let's get this money. KUDZUKIAN fans, this is your host, Samuel Nelson, with the Sell or Fail podcast. And we want you to download that app so you can't miss the next episode.
KUDZUKIAN. Check out all your KUDZUKIAN favorites now. Download the KUDZUKIAN app, available on Android and iOS.
Hey, this is DC, host of Funky Politics, and I'm back, not only with a guest, but a guest co-host, everything. Tanya Weathersby, hey, darling, how are you doing today?
Hey, doing punchy, tired, probably anxious, probably like most people we know with this election dragging out the way it is, but relieved too. It looks like right now that Joe Biden, is probably going to go over the top. That's what they're saying.
Well, see, that's what I want to talk. I want to get your thoughts from a 30,000-foot perspective on the race for White House so far, and then as we get into the show, we're gonna dissect some of this stuff because this show is about dissecting the 2020 election and a lot of these races. There's some that are still undecided. The House has still got about 30, 35, 40 races out there that need to be decided. We don't believe the House is going to flip, but
it's not.
Nancy Pelosi's, I guess, hold on power. Hopefully, it will stand if they come out on top. But let's talk about, Tanya, right away, what this thing looks like to the body politic in America in and of itself right now.
It looks like the body, but it looks like we live in two. Sadly, it looks like some things haven't changed. It's like we're in two different worlds for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's no doubt in my mind, and most people who look at this, is that this was an election where, a lot of people, well, first of all, the polls, I don't want to say the polls were off, but polling is going to need to be reevaluated a lot. I think a lot of people didn't tell the truth because, like we were talking about how a lot of the polls showed that Biden had sufficient support, had overwhelming support among women. But you get to that group, we had some problematic groups. There's white women that's showing that 55% of white women voted for Trump. Last time, 53% of them voted for Trump.
We're indexed by two. You're right.
Yeah, only indexed by two. So now the question is, do people really, want a functioning government? Are they voting to stay close to the patriarchy and who they, think is going to be in charge? I don't know. I mean, you had some interesting things that happened there, but like you said too, then you had some parts of it wasn't so surprising to me. That Cuban American vote in Florida.
Before you go there, I want you to finish your point, but my next one is we got to go to Florida.
When I say we live in two different worlds, I mean, you have one set of Americans, who are so fearful of losing, whatever advantage they think they have, until they pull a lever for somebody who's horribly incompetent, who's actually killing them. If you look at it, if you take it, I mean, he's a security threat, but that $400 million he owes. I mean, he, let this virus spread, and you can't say, oh, well, he couldn't do anything about it, because he knew about it. He told Bob Woodward. We have that in his own words. It's not anything anybody's making up. He's impeached. Now, if you think about it like this, if somebody was applying for a regular job, a regular Joe, a regular brother, a regular sister, going to apply for a job, say at MLGW or someplace like that, sure. And they had all of that kind of baggage on their record. They owed a lot of debt, and they had all those issues that raised all kinds of red flags. They wouldn't get the job, but yet people voted this guy to head the the world's superpower. So that tells you a lot right there. That tells you that a lot of people have no self-awareness about about how they use double standards. And the other thing is that we live in two different communities. I think a lot of this is a problem with where people get their news and their information from. I mean, we're at the point where people who support Trump, you can't even have a reasonable debate. And I'll get to this point too. They're all saying, you're hearing a lot of people in the echo chambers and people saying that, oh, well, we got to try to come together. We got to try to talk more. We got to try to influence each other more. But how do you do that with somebody who doesn't even start with a basis of don't even acknowledge objective facts? You see this now with the people who fighting about the voting. I mean, you're seeing people protesting the voting because their guy didn't win. And it's just ridiculous. It's people right now I'm looking at who are saying, stop the counting, the voting is rigged. No evidence whatsoever. But you know what? Somebody, they organize on Facebook, they get bad information, and they respond to it, and they go out and do these kinds of things. So you can't have a conversation, a reasonable conversation with somebody who doesn't think that who think down is up and up is down, because you're not even starting with a basis of truth.
Well, and now let's go to Florida, because I know that you are a native Floridian, number one, one of the University of Florida's finest. I think you did some work in journalism there, and was even touted by as what in the Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame, yeah,
Hall of Fame, University of Florida. So Tanya, one of those things I want to talk about with Florida, which all of us are talking about now. You've got one end of the state, the Panhandle, and then you got the southern portion, and then you got this big, thick part in the middle from Tallahassee on down to St. Petersburg that appears to be blue, but the Panhandle over to Tallahassee is red, and then now Miami-Dade County. What the hell happened in Miami-Dade County?
What happened in Miami-Dade County was the Cuban American vote. The Cuban American, first of all, just for some perspective, the Cuban American vote wasn't all that surprising, actually, because Cuban Americans have typically voted Republican because they've done that ever since, they felt like President Kennedy betrayed them in the Bay of Pigs, because they didn't fight. So they've always kind of done that. But we had hope that as Cuban Americans, you had more younger people, more people who, are farther removed from that generation, that they go more blue and more Democratic. But apparently that didn't happen. Now, in all fairness, when we talk about the Latino vote in Florida, you have Puerto Ricans and you have, Latinos from all different types of nationalities.
Venezuela, and you also have Colombia.
Definitely not in Colombia. So we aren't talking about a monolith here. We're not talking about that at all and stuff. So you have that going on too. But apparently Donald Trump made some real inroads with them, because what I'm finding out is that some things they did when he kind of used Marco Rubio as a surrogate to basically double down on the myth about, Joe Biden and the Democrats are socialists. You say the word socialist, that's like saying, when you talk about socialism, no people, they tend to not respond too rationally to that, and keep in mind, not just the Cuban American vote in Miami, but you also have expats from Venezuela who fleeing, because of the disaster that Venezuela is now, because of, New World Socialism, as they call it, so they basically responded in large part to the fear mongering. But what they also responded to is the fact that, you have Latinos who think that kind of strongman persona that he has is a good thing, is a good thing. And, when they interviewed some of them, they were saying, well, he's looking out for this country and that's all he should be looking out for. Just that type of thing that kind of appeals to some of the cultural values they already hold, including, I have to be honest, the racism. Lots of racism and colorism in Latin American countries, and a lot of them bring that with them to Florida.
But
they're not going to be swayed by his race, by the idea that he's a racist.
So Tanya, but now you said strong man. So if that's the case, I'm looking at Castro, not the brother now, but the old Castro. If you had Castro, who was a strong man in Cuba, right? And they didn't support him. So why would you support a strong man in America?
Why you want to ask me that?
I know that sounds crazy, but I mean, isn't that a credible question though? When you think about it,
that's an extremely credible question. And as they say, I'm glad you asked. Here's the deal. After my many years, I've been traveling and studying about Cuba since 2000, so over 20 years now. Okay, and here's what when you boil down all that research, and when I compare, when you look at what the Cubans on the island believe, their politics. And you look at the Cubans and, the Cubans on the island, we basically have never really given a voice to, because so much of our media and what we learn in media from Cuba is dominated by, our pro-America stance, our American interest stance, which we saw in countries, and that's a whole nother conversation about the United States and the Caribbean Basin Initiative and the whole point of trying to set up these places to be a buffer for us during the Cold War. But but what happens is that they don't have a problem with Donald Trump as a strong man, because before many of them left Cuba, Fulgencio Batista was a strong man too, but he was their strong man. Before Castro became that strong man. Remember, Batista, he tortured people, he disappeared people, he silenced people. That was one reason why they had a revolution to begin with, because you had so much inequality in Cuba, and you had, you had a lot of racial. Matter of fact, he couldn't even go to the country club because he was half black. Batista. Yeah, he couldn't, So you had that, and a lot of folk were okay with that. Most of the island wasn't really owned by Cubans. It was owned by United Fruit Company and foreign. So their biggest thing was being in charge of their destiny. And one of the biggest things, that was promised when the revolution happened. And you have to understand, people don't overthrow their government for no reason. Remember, it was a popular revolution. It wasn't a coup. It was a popular revolution in Cuba and stuff. So what happened was when they took over, Fidel Castro promised racial equality. The way he did it was he opened schools in the countryside where many Afro-Cubans were. He offered free college, free education, free health care, which they were then able to take advantage of and everything. And so that gave Afro-Cubans and Cubans, darker skinned Cubans, a modicum of dignity, even if not, necessarily financially, dignity. Well, you had many other Cubans white Cubans, who particularly resented that. They resented that. And that's what drove many of them to leave the island. That drove many of them to leave, to become expats, to come over in the Peter Pan thing, and then later on the flotilla, things like that. So, you have that. And so what you have and this is just my opinion here, but that's what I get paid to do. Sure. From what I see and from the conversations I've had, it seems to me that you have many, many Cuban Americans, who are not necessarily swayed by racist appeals from people like Donald Trump, because they have issues with Cubans on the island who haven't overthrown the government there, and most of those Cubans on the island are Afro-Cubans. So they have issues with that, and they project that, and they, and that's why, they don't care about, Trump being a strong man, because, if he's reaching out to them and catering to them, and they've always been treated, and trust me, Cuban immigrants are treated much, much differently than other ones. All they have to do is get here and they can stay, versus everybody else, they've been treated differently. They're a special group and everything. And as long as he keeps that up and, he does that, something special for them, they don't vote for him.
Well,
Yeah.
and let's talk about that breakdown of the vote. Now, I want to
Yeah.
kind of stay with Miami-Dade. As a matter of fact, Don Shalala, she lost her race. That was surprising. Used to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services for under President Clinton, I believe it was. She lost her race to a young lady who was a Cuban immigrant, daughter of Cuban immigrants, right? And so that's one thing. As a matter of fact, Hillary Clinton did somewhat better than Vice President in terms of numbers in Miami-Dade. But the talk is that the Biden campaign didn't invest enough initially in Florida when it came to the Latino community down there.
Actually, there was a lot of chatter and a lot of warnings about that, because I really kept my eye on Florida. And I'll be the first to tell you, as a Floridian, I'm really not surprised it happened the way it did. I was hoping that my state would come through at the last minute, because it looked like it would. But having said that, though, when I saw that Florida went to Trump, I thought about that, because a lot of the field people, the people who work in the field for Biden, was saying the same thing. And I think one of the things that happens is this. I think that you have to, when it comes to the Latino vote and the Latinos in the United States, you have to figure out how to deal with how to appeal to Latinos based on the culture, and how they're shaped by the cultures they come from.
Sure, that's right.
Now, our story as African Americans is a different cultural story altogether. We were brought here slaves. Most of us aren't from another place, where our perspective and our fears and our hopes have been shaped by the experiences we've had in our native country. Because this is our only native country where we've been slaves and we've gone through Jim Crow, which is why we vote the way we do. We vote largely Democratic, because that's the party that keeps up, that has helped us inch our way towards our freedom and being able to do things that we do, and equality and everything. But when you have Latinos who come from countries like, Cuba, where, a lot of them come because they want opportunity here, and they see that, and they see us as but their perspectives, are shaped by things that we innately understand as being an appeal to white supremacy, and they don't understand it in the same way. I read in one report, for example, Trump was able to appeal to a lot of Latinos who have strong religious views. A lot of them, many who come here, have benefited in their home countries from the missionaries who do work there, have converted them as Protestants, have told them that abortion is wrong. So yeah, they may vote, because that might be, abortion may be a single issue for some Latino voters, where it's not for African American voters.
Sure.
Our worldview is bigger than just one issue, but it might be that way for them. Another issue is, and I was thinking about this last night before we had this conversation. I got a master's certificate in Latin American studies, right? And I did my thesis work on rural Latinos and how and how rural white people, what kind of news were they getting, and how well were they accepting Latinos who are moving to rural areas? And a lot that might explain some of Trump's rural strength, which I would think the Latinos would influence the other way around, but that might not be the case. And sometimes if you move into an area where you get your neighbors are white, and maybe you have a business, which a lot of Latinos they start businesses and things, and you make money, and the people who are supporting your business are white and they're voting Trump. You might say, I'm gonna go ahead and vote Trump too.
You assimilate, right?
Because,
You just assimilate.
They're helping me out. They come in here. The place I did my thesis work about focusing on the tiny rural town of Waldo, which is right outside of Gainesville, University of Florida. And I went, and the thing that attracted me, that persuaded me to do that work, was in the middle of this little town, which is a redneck kind of town, and they got a flea market with a Confederate flag flying and everything. Right up the street was a Mexican restaurant in the middle of nowhere.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I started to see Mexican immigrants, playing basketball with the kids. And long story short, found out, if you think about it for a while, if people in Waldo are eating Mexican food, and it's a bunch of them who are doing that, white people, white rural people, they mingling with the people, eating, they playing basketball and everything, their political call would be, hey, you need to vote for Trump because we voting for him. And they say, okay, I mean, because it hadn't touched them in a way that, until, they started the ICE raids, and then they realized that.
There you go.
Yeah.
So right quick, Tanya, before I want to get your real quick opinion on this one, and we got to go to break in just a few seconons. The hanging Chad fiasco of 2000, I think kind of set Florida up for this type of election, right?
Yeah. Well, Florida improved a whole lot. I'm crazy since then.
Were you surprised with that at all?
Yeah.
Were you surprised with the deliberation that Florida was able to call? They were able to call Florida so quickly.
No, wasn't surprised at all. Florida called, you have to read this book that the Miami Herald did, but they just dissected what really happened and stuff. I was, that was something I was on Nightline about, looking at what happened and everything. Yeah, that was a major embarrassment for Florida. Matter of fact, the lady who was the supervisor of elections in Palm Beach County, well, they didn't have the hanging Chad, but they had the butterfly ballot. Which caused a lot of old people to vote for Pat Buchanan and not Al Gore. It was a tricky ballot. It was a lot of issues happening.
I remember that one. I do remember that in 2000.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I think she has a daughter that lives in Memphis, I believe. So the sister down there in Palm Beach.
Oh no, I'm not talking about Brenda Snipes. I'm talking. This was in 2000. Yeah,
Gotcha.
But that lady was lost a lot of weight because that thing stressed out. So people were very, very angry. Wow. You had, the problem is we had different types of ballots. You had that ballot. Plus, in Jacksonville, Florida, what happened where I live is that we had a ballot where they had the presidential candidates, go into the next page. And the Democrats did a lot of work to recruit new voters, and they did a good job. But they made a bit of a mistake when they told them they had to punch a hole on every page. Okay. And people who not real literate, new voters don't vote, they're going to punch a hole on every page. So what happened was people would punch the front for Al Gore, for Gore and Lieberman, and then they go to the next page and punch a hole for the National Party candidate.
Oh, my God. Stop right there. We got to go to break right quick.
They validated their vote.
Oh, my God. Yeah. We'll be right back with more funky politics.
Yeah.
With my good friend, Tanya Weathersby, right here in just a second.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, I'm Howard Robertson of R&R on Sports. Have you heard our latest show?
Back with us on R&R on Sports, NBA champion, Brother David West. Welcome back to R&R on Sports. Our good friend, Brother Robert Scoop Jackson. Welcome back to R&R on Sports. My brother, the Grind City Media senior editor. Mike, welcome to R&R on Sports.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, man, and I hope you guys are safe.
Get the updates by downloading the KUDZUKIAN app in the App Store or on Google Play.
KUDZUKIAN.
Hey, we are back. I am DC, the host of Funky Politics, and of course, I couldn't be here today talking about dissecting this 2020 election without having Tanya Weathersby, a columnist with the Commercial Appeal newspaper here in Memphis, Tennessee. Tanya, I tell you, a lot of information has been parsed already. I want to kind of segue another way. I want to talk about, generally speaking, countrywide, I think African-American voters did their job. I think once again, we saved
the country again, like we did 1619. We need to add that to 16.
Yeah. Black people have saved the Democratic parties. But
save
again,
the whole country.
Basically, and if this thing turns out right, the placement of Kamala Harris on this ticket, I think was spot on for Biden.
Yep, and I'm looking right now at MSNBC, but Biden has gained ground in Pennsylvania. He's Biden has jumped. Biden is with 98% of the vote in Nevada. Biden's ahead. He's probably going to get Nevada. They may today. Yeah,
and I think we'll be calling this thing today. But let's talk about that black voting strength. It was on full display in Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio. There's got to be a true black agenda now. Now, President Biden, elect Biden, can say all he want and do all he want. Black folks now want to see you come up with this commission to address violent police crimes against black men and women and other people of color in this country.
Mhm.
Do you not agree with that? I mean, you've got to
Oh, I
produce now.
definitely agree with it. Definitely agree with it. Yeah, yeah. Well, he's going to owe a lot to. They used to call it in the Olympics when Jesse Owens and other black athletes were, were beating up on the Nazis and stuff. The Black Auxiliary. Yeah, he's going to owe a lot to the Black Auxiliary because all y'all. I'm laughing because I'm thinking about the Divine Nine and they strolling to the polls and stuff like that. Just flavor of black. How we get things done. We get things done. But heck yeah, we can sit back. Okay, President-elect Biden, let's talk.
Let's go to the table.
Because remember, Biden became the nominee because of Jim Clyburn's work. And brought it home. And now people were saying, well, he was a bad choice. They were strategic in that. They were strategic in that because you would have had a harder time with bringing it home without, that. I was worried at first, but that was they put Kamala on the ticket. That helped. And he's Biden. I'm looking at Biden Bill's lead in Nevada and 98% of the votes in.
Well, but I want to go to Nevada here shortly.
7%.
But what we got here, what we're facing now is this agenda, because there's going to be those folks. I mean, there's some people out there who were Bernie bros, right?
Yeah.
And they still got butthurt feelings, and they're just going to have butthurt feelings because this guy's getting ready to be the president. I don't think Bernie could have gotten us to this point.
No way.
I don't think Amy Klobuchar could have gotten us to this point.
No.
God help us, Elizabeth Warren could. Kamala couldn't have gotten us to this point. I think you needed a centrist and let me tell you something. I'm no chauvinist, but I think you almost had to have a male. I think you almost had to have a male. Because some black men and some white men and women will not vote for a female at this time. But now maybe with 4 years of strong leadership, what do you think? Somebody may have an opportunity after this if Joe decides not to run again.
Yeah, if Joe decides not to run again. So yeah, you know what? That's real important because right now, and it's very sad to say this, and it's very vexing to me that actually this election was an election to try and stop the bleeding that Donald Trump has caused. So you can't. So you couldn't be too daring in this one. We've had things that happen in this country under Donald Trump that we've never experienced before. A pandemic that he how he could have stopped that pandemic. He could have said, listen, he could have made an address to the nation. We're fighting the enemy that we know. He could have gone Roosevelt on us, And here's what I need everybody to do: wear your mask. Go by the CDC guidelines. I'm going to direct the Senate. I'm going to direct the Senate to give everybody, $2,000 a month. Just stay home. Just don't go anywhere.
Yeah, let's lock it down for a couple of weeks.
Let's lock it down.
We can print enough damn money. We printed money before. That's all we do we issue debt every year. We could have printed money and say, hey, look, we're going to close it down for about 3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
Let's see if we can let's stay off the streets and see if we can eradicate this thing.
Yeah, do it. See if we can stay off the streets. Make it their patriotic duty. You know what? That worked during 9/11. That worked during 9/11.
Didn't it?
That's what a good leader and a smart leader would have done. And you know what? We'd be having a difference. I wouldn't feel it's everybody wouldn't be like scared about him getting another term. Yeah, I probably still wouldn't voted for him, but I would not have lost sleep over him winning, because I'm scared. He may do something else that can kill me or sicken somebody, So that's the thing about that. But that's all. If he had done that, he might be in a different position today. So you saw that happen. You saw that happen. You saw the lies. You saw all the stuff that he's impeached. All these things happen, and yet that wasn't enough to persuade a sizable number of people.
He's still sitting on 68 million votes, and I think what we did was
we gotta have a real conversation. We need a truth and Robert Wright said this, and I agree. We need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission because it's starting with truth. Because as I said earlier, it's very hard to have a conversation with a real conversation with people in this divisive information, environment that we're in. When you got people, good grief, Georgia's sending a QAnon person to Congress. A QAnon person and a guy who admires Hitler.
Out of North Carolina,
Out of North Carolina, what in the world?
But Tanya, I will say this: if we do start with a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the first thing the first thing that has to be, and this is just my complete opinion, being around here 53 years,
Yeah.
the first damn thing that's got to be addressed is race.
Oh, yeah.
It's racial injustice.
Yeah.
I think that is
I agree.
really,
Yeah.
I think that's all of it. I really believe once we put that to bed as Americans, once we admit the wrong, how do we fix the wrong, and can we move forward?
Yeah.
As a team, then I think you see the rest of the world fall at our feet and say, we worship America because you are now leading. That's just my,
right.
that's
We
my
got to
complete
fix
opinion.
that. We got to start with race. We have to start with that. That's the great final reckoning that America needs to come to terms with. You know, we got to start with race, and you got to start from a point of honesty. You know, you can't start with this thing, well, America's always been great, and you can't start with an effort to rewrite and sanitize this odious history that we have. You got to face it. You got to face it and say, okay, what can we do? What can we do to get this behind us? And what can we do to repair it? You know, repair the breach, you know, as they say, repair the breach.
And I want to talk about repairing a breach, because before we talk about repairing a breach, let's kind of dissect this thing a little bit. I want to get into some of the weeds right now. And one of those weeds really is black men. I looked at some data the other day that was very surprising to me, where you're looking at 18 to 20% of black men actually supported the president. Now, let me say this, and that's fine if that's your vote. But I'll say this: of that 18 to 20%, about 52% is what I looked at. 26% of that were black men who were high school graduates or close to being a high school graduate. So in other words, those who didn't start college. So it's just like the white males.
Yeah.
So maybe this is some of that you're talking about with the Mexican Americans or the Hispanic Americans or the Latinos in Waldo, Florida. I'm living around you, and we've assimilated.
Yeah.
But
I think first of all, I think that after this election, when it comes to these black men who was supporting Trump, I think we need to go to these barbershops and stuff and deal with some of these people who, in my opinion, is a little bit problematic. And here's what I mean when I say that.
Okay.
I'm going to guess some of that may be some assimilation, you know, because and you kind of hit the nail on the head, education level. But I think for African American, for younger black men, uneducated black men who supported Trump, I think it's because of that cultural exposure to rap. You know, think about rap music for a while. If they're in the rap, and a ton of them are and stuff, what do you hear in rap music? You hear the misogyny, you know. You hear all that stuff, which Trump, you know, it could be if you printed a dictionary, Trump, you need Trump picture bag, you know, misogyny,
making that money.
That whole Machiavellian attitude, which rappers brag about, you see them with the Scarface shirts on and stuff like that. If you don't have education, you just right out of high school, no college, and that's all you're exposed to. Well, in that point, you think, you know, you don't have a problem with somebody like Trump. Plus, you know, the stuff he talks about, you know, his xenophobia. If you're an African American male who may be trying to get construction work, and you think you're having to compete with Latinos, illegal people who are undocumented, you know, you might cheer him on, you know. That's so right. You know, so that may explain some of that. And some people fall easily conned. You know, some people fall for the con. They don't.
You know, in 2016, I think a lot of us were, because guess what? You saw this brash guy come on. We've seen him on TV, so we've seen him on TV. He's got to be trustworthy. Remember that? You know, if you're on TV, you got to be a great person. That's a damn lie. That's a damn lie.
And you know what? That's a huge problem. I was just telling my boyfriend the other night. I said, another thing we got to deal with once this is over, the culture. We have a culture now where people are so guided by reality shows and television, and they think that's the way to go. A lot of people, you know, think that, you know, that they see these folks as authorities on things, and a lot of them, you know, are morons. Just to be honest with you, you know, and they embrace shallow things, and that and that's what it leads to, that kind of stuff. Now, I'll venture this too. Some of that support from younger, uneducated black males might possibly be due to Trump's inroads to them about criminal justice. I mean, he pardons Alice Johnson, and you know he's pardoned some people on drug crimes and things like that. That may have had an appeal to.
But Tanya, we've got to call that. And I want to make sure. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
I've done some study on this, and let me say this: the president can pardon you on a federal felonious crime. He can do that.
Yeah.
But guess what?
Can do
That ain't what we're getting. We're getting these state felonies is what we're getting, Tanya. So this big thing on the 94 crime bill, this thing on the 94 crime bill that they say Joe Biden, he was the reason, and he and Bill Clinton were the reason that black men that's a lie. We weren't going to federal prison then. We were going to state prisons because they came up with that 3 strikes you're out crap, right? And so now you have this issue with Joe took this hit from us saying that, he sent a lot of us to jail. No, he didn't.
No,
people like you, and you and I have talked about this before, and I don't mind you sharing your story. You were accosted back in Florida back in the day, and you wanted something done with this guy with a shotgun in your face.
Right. Yeah. I wanted something done, but I don't. If I had found him, I wouldn't want him to go to prison for life. Though.
Sure. So what? So let the justice system do what they do, right?
Yeah.
And that's how it works. So
all of the crimes, those draconian sentences were decided at the state levels. And you have to be
educated, don't you? You have to be educated on this.
Woke people. The last time you look at, I always tell people all the time. I always say, you know what? We live in an age where people have a lot of information, but that information is useless if you don't have wisdom. What I mean by that is like the last time when you had a number of African Americans who didn't want to support Hillary Clinton because of the crime bill. And I got people in my family because of that. And you have to break it down and explain it to them. But you have to understand that things need context and history. And when the youngsters used to talk to me about that, I said, well, how old are you? Most of us said, well, you weren't even born by the 90s. I was 31 years old. And I remember how bad it was. And I was mugged, by a crackhead. Things were really, really bad. You had people who couldn't go into their houses. They were pleading for something to be done. Now, granted, the punishment turned out to backfire and to lead to some outcomes that mass incarceration and a lot of outcomes that have been detrimental to the community. But guess what you do? You explain that to the candidate and ask them if they're going to fix it. Give them a chance to fix it. That's the thing about that. Give them a chance. If they got a plan to fix it, then work with that. Do that. Work with that. But I'm not going to vote for them because, because you think you punishing them, then you punish yourself. It's somebody who clueless, who going to turn around and be so incompetent till they unleash a virus on you.
Well, and let's keep talking. I want to keep dissecting. We're going to keep dissecting this thing. Black women turned out for Hillary Rodham Clinton in 2016 at 94%. So far, they've turned out for Joe Biden at 91%, just a drop off about 3%.
Yeah.
But I believe what we're seeing is, and this is just my prognostication. I like to prognosticate, Tanya. I believe what we're seeing is that 91% is going to be the difference maker in a lot of these communities of color. In Detroit, in Milwaukee, in the Chicago's, you're going to see that the sisters stayed in line, and I'm going to shout out the sisters. And I'm not denigrating the brothers because there was a lot of us that stayed in line as well too. Yeah. But the sisters at 91%.
Y'all did too. It's a brother in Detroit said some profound stuff. It's early and I can't remember, but he said we gonna make this happen.
Yeah, we're gonna make it happen. And so, and I think from a demographic standpoint, when I go back to this again, I think President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris will say we've got to make a difference in the lives of real difference in the lives of Black people. We got to really talk about reparations. My cousin Darren Henderson, he's big on that. He's made me say, hey man, we got to talk. He's right. You got to have at least a conversation about it. And really, there's HR 40 sitting out there. Let's act on it. If the Senate turns it down, damn it, they turned it down. But let's act on HR 40 right now, right?
Yeah,
and go from there. Yeah. But now then you got a guy like Kanye West. Kanye, he conceded the other day.
Kanye said, he got 60,000 votes.
61,000.
61. He said we'll see him in 2024. I said, all right. I'm like, all right.
So let's just say the race does not turn out in Donald Trump's favor, and I'm thinking that's what's going to happen in President 45. Ice Cube and 50 Cent, but we as Black people, we're not monolithic as well either. No, are we putting too much on us in one basket? Should we be a lot more diverse in terms of our voting strength?
We should be a lot more diverse, and in terms of our voting strength. But we haven't had the opportunity to do that because the Republican Party, which I don't know what it's going to be after this, but the Republican Party, since since the Southern strategy and Nixon has hitched this wagon to turning out white voters, to the white resentment thing, So how can you where will we go? Because you can't go to a party whose core ideology is about keeping you suppressed. I mean, it's very hard. I've written this I wrote this back in the early 2000s. I used a little contrast between myself and my conservative editor at the Florida Times-Union, who's a great guy, good, and stuff. But we should have different, and that was when you could have a conversation with somebody based on facts, and you could say to them, well, I may not agree with you, but I see your point. You see their point, and that's how you start to work with people, when you start with facts and stuff. But the thing I said to him, I said, you know what? I would really, as an African American, I would really like to see the day when we can vote when we don't have to vote in politics defensively. When I can elect a Republican, I can vote for a Republican, because I know at the end of the day, they're not basing their success on pandering to a population that is fearful of me and don't want to see me get ahead. That's the thing. When I can vote for a party, I got to choose a party that's not fear mongering. With white people, not tied to building white resentment to win. And that's the thing. I mean, you have African American Black people who are Republican, and they make the same argument. Well, see, we don't spread our votes out. Sure. I wish we did. And you know what? If we did, we all would be less stressed about wins.
Well, one thing about it, Tanya, is and I want to stay there just 1 second before we jump to another topic, and that is poor.
Yeah.
Poor is still poor. Hell, you Hispanic, you Latino, you gay, you straight, you Black, you white, poor is poor.
Yeah.
But when does the Democratic Party decide that some of these big idea, if you've opened it up to this segment here, when do we start going in communities? And I know pandemic hurt us a little bit, and I think that's real. I think that hurt the Biden campaign, not going door to door, because the president's side, they were still out there going door to door. He's even winning. He probably would have won this landslide had they been going door to door.
Yeah.
But when do they start going door to door in little places like Waldo? When do they start going door to door and they start talking about some of the things that poor people really want to talk about in this country?
Yeah. I don't know when they do that, but the thing is, I think historically it's always been kind of hard to organize poor people because of the daily stresses they're trying to keep up with, and because many of them don't see politics as making a difference in their lives. And of course, many politicians, they don't focus on poor people as much because they figure they don't vote and they don't pay taxes. And a lot of poor people need to realize if you start voting, and stuff, then, they'll start to pay attention to you and, listen and deal with your needs a lot and think. But, we have a fundamental problem in this country just with income inequality. Sure. And, when you see Jeff Bezos, ultra rich Jeff Bezos who hardly pay any taxes, it's bad. We gotta deal with all of these things. We got to deal with structural things, and the politicians have to, they got to try to understand and muster their strength to let these folks know, hey, there's going to be a reckoning with this, because people, are in the streets now, and it's not just because of the police stuff. It's because of all other underlying structural issues of inequality that aren't being addressed. You can see in those George Floyd protests and the police protests, people talking about college loan forgiveness, free college, all types of things.
A lot of those things to me were bellwether. I mean, free college loan forgiveness. I mean, to a guy who's who's working a couple of jobs, or a lady who's working a couple of jobs, who went to school, probably couldn't finish school, and still paying student loan. To me, that would say Joe Biden. That to me, even if I'm white, that says Joe Biden. Looking at that thing with George Floyd and that police officer on the neck, I say to myself, I may not live next door to a Black person, but that could be my kid. Now, understand, some police, I will say this, they do probably some of the same stuff with the white males. It's not blown out like it is for us, but it happens, right? So if it happened to a white person, wouldn't they be as more so saying, hey, we need to create this commission as well?
They should.
On police and racial reconciliation.
Yeah, because it shouldn't just be, but it's very, very hard, to get things done when you have somebody on the other side of things who don't start with a basis in facts. They start with a stereotype. They start with something they saw that was pumped out by some conspiracy website.
QAnon. Proud Boys, or was Vice President Biden called them the poor boys? So.
The poor boys, yeah.
Call them the choir boys.
That's a job for journalism too, actually, going forward, because it's and one of the things, the good stories about this is we find that more people are coming back to newspapers and get information and I tell people all the time, listen, you need to go to mainstream news because we vetted a lot of that stuff already.
Wow.
But human nature will drive a lot of people to read and pay attention to I call it the journalism of affirmation that affirms whatever belief they have, Yeah. And unfortunately it's going to take a lot to pull people away from that group. But I'm gonna still keep hope alive.
Hey, I got about 50 seconds before we get out of here.
Okay.
Reverend Raphael Warnock, Kelly Loeffler in Georgia, and it looks like that there will be a runoff between David Perdue and John Ossoff in Georgia. What do the Democrats need to do to get those two seats to flip? Let's just say that Biden wins. What do they need to do to go? Does every Democrat in the world need to go to Georgia now and start knocking on doors?
They got to knock on some doors, and they're already saying that is going to be like probably one of the most expensive races in history again. Mm-hmm. But you know what? It's worth it because if Ossoff wins and if Warnock wins, then we got the Senate. The Democrats have the Senate. They have the Senate and everything because now, I'm reading things about how chances are that Mitch McConnell is going to try to hamstring a lot of things that President Biden would do because, if like say they're saying that if he tries to put Stacey Abrams or somebody they see as too liberal, then he's going to hamstring him. And they're already saying that Biden is going to have to find like moderate people and things like that. Now, I don't particularly agree with that. I think Biden got a lot of options, there and stuff.
I think you just run them. I think you just put them up there. If they turn them down, then you go back to the American people in 2 more years because guess what? Yeah. You got the gentleman out of Pennsylvania who's up next. Who's up? And so Pat Toomer. So you got some other Senate Republicans. Yeah. So they're the face of people.
And the other thing I think about this, to be honest with you, is that as much as Susan Collins, who we thought was left for dead, pretty much.
Really thought she
Collins, but you got about 3 reasonable Republicans that you could deal with. Those 3, Collins,
Mitt Romney,
and Lisa Murkowski. I'm not happy about their vote for Amy Coney Barrett, but you don't have to worry about the Trump factor now. I bet a lot of Republicans are going to be happy when he's gone. You don't have to worry about, worrying about trying to that you're going to lose your Trump loving constituency.
And you know what? They'll be able to sleep through the night without having to wake up and checking their phone for Twitter and seeing what.
I know. Yeah, what he said. What's he done during this administration? It's like I say, what's he done now?
Right. Tanya, thank you so much for being on Funky Politics with us. You have done us a world of worth today, explaining this Cuba piece with us again, and also kind of running down these races and what it looks like out there.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, young lady. We'll see you again. I'll be right back with some closing thoughts right here on Funky Politics.
Okay. All right. Stay good. Stay funky.
KUDZUKIAN.
So we're talking about actual harm against actual people.
Different episodes. You come up with a more surprising thing.
You just taking baby steps, talking about escapism and like, yo, I'm mad, but I'm tired.
Hello. It is a privilege and an honor to join you for this special ceremony.
I can't tell you how privileged and pleased I am to be a part of the most critical conversation of 2020.
Sickle cell disease from birth to childhood up. So thank you for joining us.
KUDZUKIAN. Check out all your KUDZUKIAN favorites now. Download the KUDZUKIAN app, available on Android and iOS.
Hey, we are back. I got just a couple of closing thoughts. Man, when I need to bring in a heavy hitter, it's like, I ain't gonna tell what the lawyer's name is, but he's a heavy hitter, and she's a heavy hitter too. One of the University of Florida's best, Tanya Weathersby. She knows politics. She knows everything. Make sure you check out her column. Check out her weekly column in the Commercial Appeal. Sometimes she does two because she's really good at this thing, right? So check out Tanya Weathersby column in the Commercial Appeal newspaper. Go online, get it. You need to subscribe to the Commercial Appeal as well too. And she also has a wonderful show called 20 with Tanya. She's got a bunch of shows. Go out and check those shows out as well too. Look, pandemic is still going. The numbers are escalating. They are going up, and away. Folks, we are not out of this thing. As a matter of fact, it looks really, really bad. I'm just going to tell you, stay prayed up, stay cleaned up, wash those hands, make sure you're social distancing, stay away from the mass parties. You got to do it because if not, we're going to kill ourselves. We cannot do that. Also, wear your damn mask. Wear that mask. If you don't, just wear the damn mask, okay? That's all I got to say here. I'm DC. I'm out of here. We've been, oh, God, I've been had a great day here on Funky Politics. See you the next time.